This week we've got a small photo with a big subject, elephants. It came up for sale on eBay a few weeks ago and caught my eye as something new. I don't have any pictures of elephants. Luckily I was the only bidder, so I'm now the proud owner of this little photograph. So what were elephants doing in Hong Kong? Well, although it's the first photo of elephants in my collection, it's not the first time we've seen elephants on Kowloon. Here's a 1934 newspaper advertisement for Franz Isako's Circus, which included 10 performing elephants with 50 horses and lots of other animals beside. So when elephants came to town, they were here as part of a circus. Switch back to the photo, which is a lot easier to see after scanning. Now with all this extra detail, we can dig into the photos, who and what, where and when, and where is the easiest one to start with. If we look across in the distance, these are buildings along the north shore of Hong Kong Island. So here we must be at the Kowloon Wharves. Now if you remember, we saw the Kowloon Wharves in the previous video. That was looking at this 1909 panorama, and across the harbour on the western shores of Tsim Sha Tsui, you had the Kowloon Wharves. This is roughly where you'd find Harbour City Ocean Terminal today. The elephants were being unloaded back here at the northern pier. We know that because if we look back to the photo, we can see the southern piers in front of us here. Who are we looking at? Quite a crowd. I think these will be workers from the docks taking a break to come and admire the spectacle, something they wouldn't see every day. Down in the foreground though, these men clearly aren't Chinese. So I guess these were here with the circus, just making sure that the animals are being unloaded carefully. How about what can we see? Well, in the foreground, this is the ship that brought the animals here. They're being unloaded from the hold. The elephants looking pretty calm about it all. I guess this was quite a regular occurrence for them. And beyond them, there's a wooden box. It belongs to the Hong Kong Jockey Club. You can see it's got a little cutout for a head here. So I think this would be for unloading the circus's horses from the same ship. Over at the next pier, we've got quite an unusually shaped boat here. And these buckets show that it's a dredger. So its job was to excavate material from the seabed. Switching back to Kowloon again. If we search by tags, we've got some photos of dredges, and this one in fact looks very similar. Not exactly the same though. There are a couple of small differences, make me wonder if perhaps they're two different boats. But if you look at the markings on the funnel, they're very similar on both of them. So I think at least we can say they belong to the same company, the Netherlands Harbour Works. Beyond that, a much larger ship here. This is a passenger liner, the last of the piers. And I think the markings on the funnel for this ship show it as a member of the NYK Line. Now, if I've got that wrong, please let me know. NYK, or Nippon Yusen Kaisha, was a Japanese shipping line, and their ships were regular visitors here to Hong Kong. How about when was the picture taken? Let's look back across to the North Shore, and can you see there's a pale coloured patch here? So back to Kowloon, and that looks very much like the tower of the Gloucester Building. So if you look at photos of it, it had a tall tower and it was a white colour, so it really stood out in pictures from that time. For us, the important thing is that it was finished in 1932, so it helps us put a date on the picture. The picture can't have been taken any earlier than 1932. Here's another distinctive building, HSBC Headquarters here. So back to Kowloon again, and I know it's their third headquarters building. This one finished in 1935. When it is all finished, it'll look like this. Now in our picture, the top section is a bit not very distinct, not very clear to see. And I don't know if that's just a problem with the lighting or the photo not being sharp there, or whether perhaps the building was still under construction like this, and that makes the darker section at the top here. Anyway, I think we can safely say that this picture would be no earlier than 1934, even if this was still under construction. Now, as you can guess, Japanese shipping wasn't very popular in Hong Kong after the war, so that narrows down the range. So this picture taken sometime between 1934 and the outbreak of war in 1941. Now then I had a bright idea that perhaps we could find mentions of the circus in the local newspapers. And we can search the old newspapers in the Hong Kong Public Library website, their Multimedia Information System. So I'm going to search for anything that has the word elephant. But unfortunately there are over 2,000 things with the word elephant. So let's try and narrow that down. First I'll say just show us newspapers. That's a bit better, only 475. How about only from the 1930s? Okay, now we're getting somewhere, down to about 130. And I'll say it must include the word circus as well. And that brings us down to 12 results. Let's just sort them. Put the oldest ones up the top. Then checking through the results, there are only 2 that fit our time frame and show circuses in Hong Kong rather than a newspaper about a circus in Germany or the UK, for example. The first match is from November 1935. And it shows an excellent program at Harmston's. The circus comes to town with amazing cockatoos and elephants. And importantly for us, it was held in Kowloon. So that's a potential match. How about the other one? The other one is the next result. This one from January 1937. They also have elephants, but they were unloaded at the Steamboat Company's wharf in Connaught Road. So that's not a match for us. We need something happening over in Kowloon. So we might be tempted to say, well, it's Harmston's, but unfortunately, the search results for MMIS are never very accurate. They miss lots of matches because of the trouble they have recognizing text in the old newspapers. So if you remember, we started off with this advertisement for Isako Circus, also from 1934, but there was no mention of it in the results we just saw. Checking this circus, it was also at Kowloon. So my newspaper search doesn't really turn up anything very, very useful. What can we say then? Well, we can say it's clearly a picture of elephants being unloaded, that they were part of a circus. This is all happening at the Kowloon Wharves, and it's happening sometime between 1934 and 1941. And if I've missed any clues that will help narrow down the dates further, please do let us know in the comments below. That wraps up this week's photo. Thank you very much for watching.